Okay, hello, welcome back to another video. Today I'm creating a special challenge. What is this special challenge? Well, I'm sure the title and thumbnail maybe gives the game away a little, but we're going to be going 10 minutes per side and a 5-second increment because my dad is incapable of using a mouse and is going to be slowly trawling across the trackpad. Standard, real time, and he's specifically requested the white pieces, so I'll play as black. We're sending him a challenge now. Don't go and spam my dad's Lichess account, please. And he's accepted. So this is going to be like a normal gameplay video on Lichess. However, I'm playing my roughly 1700 rated father and hopefully can look for some extremely instructive play. So he plays the Nimzo Larsen, which is b3. Now I'm going to play e5 here. Oh, this volume is a little loud, excuse me. And after this pre-moved fianchetto, I'm going to play knight to c6. I'd imagine e3. For a while, I believe he played something like knight f3 here. I had to say, listen, if you're going to play a hypermodern opening, you're going to have to play it at least vaguely correctly, and I'm fairly familiar with this opening plan. So what we're going to do against this hypermodern nonsense is place 2 pawns in the center. I'd imagine bishop b5 now happens, pinning the knight, threatening to take the pawn, and then we're going to play bishop to d6, stabilizing that pawn. You can go for this early trade if you like, but it tends to not result in the most positive positions for white. You get rid of your bishop pair. So he plays knight f3 instead. Okay, I think maybe the best move, or at least the most common move in the Masters database, is f4 there. And there's a very interesting idea, because of course, by the way, sorry, I can't take because of bishop g7. And there's a very interesting idea, if f4, of going queen h4, inducing g3, and then coming back to e7. And then maybe attacking that in the future with rh pawn. But instead he goes knight f3, mounting the pressure on the pawn straight away. I think f6 is appropriate. Somewhere Benjamin Feingold has just had a heart attack, but sometimes it is appropriate to play f6. We're going to stabilize the center here with our pawn. Yes, this knight's pinned. No, I'm not too worried about it because, of course, we've got the bishop and pawn doing a fantastic job. However, this is definitely a very reasonable opening. I tend to find that, of course, he's going to castle kingside. I mean, the bishop has vacated the way, the knight's vacated the way. You can castle kingside with ease here, with absolute ease. And so f6 maybe also serves this multifaceted purpose of not only stabilizing the center, but perhaps justifying a nice, expansive g5 pawn storm. Okay, so he thinks that I'm not going to see queen to h5 check, and then after g6, knight takes here, and then I lose my rook. Okay, instead of blundering this, I will defend it. How am I going to defend it? Well, bishop e6 seems plausible, and also a move that I probably want to go for anyway. Developing the bishop, and then if queen to h5, I can play bishop h7. The queen's going to have to move. You can't, like, come into f5 or anything annoying, so I just played knight g7. So I think bishop e6 will solve that problem of the queen h5 threat in a way that also allows me to carry on developing my pieces. Now, this is a pretty kind of a one-move threat because, you know, you're playing hope chess to a certain extent. If your opponent does see the idea of queen h5, then what you've effectively done, he does decide to liquidate here, is kind of isolate, or I guess sideline is a more appropriate word, your knight there. Of course, we're going to recapture, sorry, I don't know why I'm hesitating over this. And the knight is going to need, you know, you're going to need to spend a tempo bringing it back more appropriately into the fray. But we have a very dominant control of the center, and now d4, right. The amount of times I have told him to stop playing this move. d4 is interesting. It's a claim to the center. Yes, I was just talking about how I'd built up such a nice, fat, controlling, dominant pawn center. d4 is a claim to that, and should I maybe take, then actually opening up this bishop and trying to, you know, dissolve this center in some way is probably a very good idea. I'm just going to push past, because now we open up that bishop towards the king, which is probably the most likely destination for castling. And if you don't castle, there are obvious repercussions to not castling. And if you go queenside, I mean, we've already got this open b file given to us by the trade of that bishop for the pony. So opening this up here drastically improves my bishop, and at the same time drastically worsens the bishop on b2. This is kind of the whole idea of okay, g4, right, now we're talking. g4 is legitimately interesting. I'm again very suspicious, because now, okay, your king is going to be kind of weak. You also, in pushing your g-pawn, given the fact that you've also pushed your e-pawn, leave this f3 square structurally undefended, as in it's not defended by pawns and can never be, crucially, because pawns, of course, can't move backwards. This renders f3 a hole, which could be very potentially exploitable for my pony. Now, if I go g5 here, and then there's just knight f5, takes, I don't love that. Probably it's actually quite good for me. I can easily go after this pawn, maybe queen d7. Yeah, but I really don't love it. I think what I'm going to start with is just knight g to e7 here. Clearly this pawn on f6 is not going to allow me to immediately play knight f6 as maybe more natural. And I don't really want to push the pawn to f5 because I think then actually dissolving this here, maybe an open g file. I mean, I'm not exactly castling unless I get the opportunity to castle kingside. My kingside is, as of yet, unperturbed to the extent where castling kingside would be pretty ridiculous. I can't say the same for my father's kingside. But let's hydrate and wait for the response here. I think knight g7 does a couple things. First of all, it develops my only undeveloped minor piece. It also controls two pretty important squares, g6 and f5. Maybe I go into g6, and then after a trade of knights like this... Can that make any sense? That just cannot make any sense, can it? I mean, I know he's trying to like bite on a hook here vaguely and open some stuff up, maybe bring the rook in. But if I just take, you don't have queen... Oh, maybe queen h5 is kind of interesting, actually. If I take, you've got to try queen h5, because otherwise knight g2, and then your knight's not going anywhere. I've won a pawn, everything's fine. So takes... Then queen to h5 check, and you're going to be able to win back that pawn, most likely. This is interesting, and then if I end up castling this way, all of a sudden this whole thing maybe made sense with an open g-file. Maybe I don't take. Maybe it's not even necessary to take at all. I mean, even say g6, now that the knight defends g6, there's queen takes here, and I don't actually love that. Okay, I'll give him more credit than I think I originally did. g5's interesting. I didn't think about this whole queen h5. But what I think I might do is maybe just play knight g6, because if you trade, I get this open h-file, or maybe infiltrate over here, and also moving the knight is going to allow my queen to defend f6. So I think I'm quite happy with knight g6. We, again, rid ourselves of having to worry about any queen h5 stuff. Maybe queen h5 here anyway is kind of interesting, but then it seems bishop f7, and that queen just does not belong there. I'm not entirely sure, but whatever happens here on the king side, this bishop is just locked up here. Now maybe c4 at some point, maybe this isn't even ridiculous. Maybe this little flank attack with the knight bears more fruit than I originally thought. However, I would say that the kind of grain of the position, the natural flow of play, tends to go in the direction, there we go, he does take, okay, we'll recapture, that the central pawn chain points, in the sense that you see my bishops have very easy mobility over this way, and his really doesn't. So, takes. Do I take with the pawn, redeeming my pawn structure, or with the queen, bring the queen to a very active and pleasant square, putting pressure on f2, keeping the open f-file? I think I prefer taking with the queen, somewhat controversially, I don't know. Yeah, I think I will take with the queen. I think it's just activity now. We've got a bishop pair as well. It's not exactly like my light square bishop's having the time of its life under this kind of blocky light squared pawn structure, but I think probably like king d7, rook f8, pressure on here as well, this pawn's probably going to collapse, and you're still 1, 2, 3 moves from castling queenside, which means that, you know, any attack down this side of the board is probably going to be relevant towards this king. We definitely have a nice space advantage here. So, okay, what moves might you consider? I guess probably you don't want to be in the market to lose this pawn, but actually I control all of the squares. Not only that the pawn's on, but that the pawn could move to, with just these beautiful diagonal pieces, bishops, and of course the queen, and then obviously the rook acting fantastically along this h-file. I think the open h-file is really one of my main claims to advantage here. And so maybe I'd imagine he's spending some time here trying to consider, how do I hold this pawn? Deciding, okay, I can't, and playing knight here. Now c4 at some point seems kind of necessary to me. But the knight coming here, do I take this? Here. Or do I prioritize like rook here because you still can't defend this? Unless you do with knight to f1, which is actually quite interesting, and then rook f8, maybe queen here. And I get to play like bishop g... No, I don't, because then that'd be a check. I think knight f1 to defend this pawn might be what he goes for. And so if I play king e7 rather than king d7, we see knight f1 to hold the pawn. I then play rook f8. You have to defend this, and you have to do it with the queen. I guess there's maybe... Oh no, queen here, bishop g5 you could take with check, or just play c3. I'm thinking if queen to e2, I might have some bishop g4 idea. Maybe it is just appropriate to take like this. Because I guess rook takes, and there is tempo on here immediately. Rook takes, bishop takes. I guess actually you can't really bring the queen into the fray remotely interestingly. I guess queen e2. Okay, let's just... Here, queen e2. The thing is, even if you castle this way, I'm going to play a5, a4. Right, let's grab this pawn. Not perhaps the most romantic thing I could possibly do. I do think we maybe give up a little initiative by allowing this trade, and then now he has a move, of course, probably queen e2, because every other move hangs the queen, and you probably want to castle this way. Unless we do see an outrageous little knight f1 here. But I think you've got to prioritize getting your king out here. I mean, look at the state of the king side. Queen e2, what's my follow-up? Do I play king d7? I don't think castling makes any sense for me, really. Yeah, okay. I like king d7, I think. Queenside castles, a5. Let's go for this. We're going to bring the king here just because also maybe holding on to c6 is a pretty decent idea. If he does go for a castle, we're going to switch up our direction of attack to the queen side here. I really expected to have more of an advantage by this point. Let me be completely honest. I think this is deceptively difficult to play against. Let's play a5. I'm not worried here. You know, we're up a pawn pretty cleanly. I have a nice brewing attack. Bishop here, maybe queen e7. Bishop could always come to f5 to solidify all this. But somehow his king feels a little safer than mine. Now the question is, and he does, will he play a4? No way. But at least, okay, this queen has like no moves. I mean, almost literally no moves. So maybe we just take time to improve our bishop, because this bishop sucks. I'm going to start with bishop d6. Okay, okay, okay. I might have missed. I might have missed some ideas here. I think I've played pretty well, honestly. I was really expecting that F4 move. That threw me off when he didn't go for it. But the trades and then. Yeah, I not castle and kingside is very interesting. Hold on, he's made a move. It's not C6, sorry, F3. I think I will take. I don't want to let you take, so I'm going to take. I don't let you plant a knight on this square, for instance. Now, a queen trade would seem far from ideal. I'd really rather not trade queens. If he goes for this, what price am I willing to pay to trade queens? A small loss of tempo back to E7? Doesn't seem like a drastic price. Also, opening this up, actually, maybe starts to give some life to this light square bishop. I'll be very concerned if okay, no, sorry. He has to address this straight away, but I'll be very concerned if E4 is possible at some point. But knight takes or queen takes? If knight takes, probably rook F8 is pretty undeniably at least a decent move. And then bishop G4. Although there's going to be a check, maybe? Whoa, okay, hold on. Check here. The hell's going on? Here, check. I take, and you can take this. Okay, I will play rook F8. I think we need the activity on the F file. I think my rook's doing basically nothing over here, although queen A6. Damn, objectively speaking, I actually am not the biggest fan of what's going on here. It does take, I was assuming that was going to happen. Now, do I trade? I don't want to leave that knight there, surely. Okay. We're going to go here, and then I'm going to have to move my queen. I mean, this is definitely worsening the pawn structure. I'm also up a pawn, but I've got to be careful I don't just walk into an opposite color bishop's endgame that's a draw. I think queen to F2 is going to be most appropriate. If we see a queen trade, my rook gains a bunch of activity, and we have bishop F5. And again, we have passed pawns here, so if the rooks come off the board, the king's got to go and deal with these pawns. Now, if the queen doesn't want to be traded, which I imagine maybe is the case, then you've got to stay attached to this pawn here. Yeah, okay, we do see the queen trade. Okay, fine. And then maybe I had bishop F5. But bishop F5 here seems nice. Maybe there's E4 straight away? I guess I maybe come in behind that, and if you take, I can take it. My pawns aren't pleasant. This is very, I don't know. I'm not feeling confident about this position at all. I mean, I know I'm not going to lose the game here, but I really also want to avoid a draw. That would be intensely embarrassing because he will not let me hit the end of it if I get a draw here. I might step out from the pin. If you take, I'm probably going to take with the pawn. Let's play rook in behind. We're threatening to take now. So provoking him to take, then taking with the pawn, redeeming these double pawns, and then maybe playing c6, bishop f5, and cementing the bishop on e4. I think that is going to bear some fruit. Keeping this blockaded is going to be quite nice as well. Yeah, it does take. I'll take with the pawn. And then, yeah, the idea to get my bishop to f5 after... Whoa, okay, but we play c6 very naturally. Now this bishop might be looking at something very soft in that diagonal. But this is looking dangerously drawish. Dangerously drawish. But yeah, I'm imagining takes. We could play king c6 and get the bishop on f5. And one thing about my dad is that if he gets, even with a 5-second increment, below like 3 minutes on the clock, he will start blundering profusely. The purely psychological pressure of that number getting steadily lower is going to be stressing him out now. Okay, here. I think that might have been, that was just before his time was about to become lower than mine. That may have been a psychological reason there. Right, now we bring the bishop in though. You've got to probably play rook d2 here. I don't really see a way, if you don't play rook d2, to prevent sincerely dire things happening on c2, and potentially we're looking at some kind of windmill, or at the very least winning a pawn with a discovered check. Now this check allowing me to pick up this pawn. I mean, this pawn's hardly as valuable as this one. But if rook d2, if I give a check, you've got to go back. So, you know, rook d2, there's no way I trade on here, because then king recapturing gets the king to the second rank, and therefore kind of vaguely close to the action. If here, and I want to trade rooks, at the very least I go check, force the rook back, because then it's my move. But the king's on d1 rather than d2. So there's probably some tempo there. I don't think I pressed for enough here. I'm absolutely bamboozled, although the time is becoming steadily more and more of an issue. Rook here. Okay, we can give this check without really thinking. Push the rook back. Now, I'm really not convinced by an opposite colour bishop's endgame. This, however, going after a weak backwards pawn here. You can't bring the king up, you can't bring the rook up. Let's start, I think, with rook e3. I mean, maybe this trade was winning, but I'm more convinced by keeping the rooks on the board, because famously, the time's just gone red. He's going to be stressed. Famously, opposite colour bishop's endgames are very, very often drawish. Rook e3 is nice, though. Check, forcing the rook back, then rook e3. So the push... the gambit there for, I guess, the passed pawn on a4. You'd assume we have to take. Okay, we will take. There's now 3 pawns remaining. They're all isolated. He does go for this. Do I have like this? Here. It'd be quite funny though. The thing is, I'm solid here. I'm absolutely solid. And now that we've won an extra pawn, maybe this. King takes. King c7. Your bishop can't attack my pawn quick enough. Even if you drop back, I go here. You go here, I go here. You take this. I go here, then you've got to pick a pawn to defend. If you defend that one, and you drop back again, and I take here and you push, I can go here, and I win that pawn. I think this is probably winning. Let's do this. I'm almost certain this is winning. Now, if you push again, I just go check, king here by force, and then the check here. But now we can go check, force the rook back, force the trade, king c7, and walk over and take the pawn. And again, it's important that, you know, every little tempo helps here, as Tesco's would say. Is it Tesco's? It must be Tesco's. My bishop holding this pawn, preventing it from progressing. That's intriguing. I guess you're going for this one. I'm just not convinced by that at all. Again, this is a double pawn. Now we step across, and you haven't invested the time to step back to take this pawn. So there's no bishop. Yeah, okay, but now we go here, and you're not holding this. Unless you are. Oh, and then here? And the bishop comes to here. But then your bishop can't move. Then there are no bishop moves. My king prevents the promotion here, and we just have like 3 passed pawns. Not connected passed pawns, but passed pawns nevertheless. Okay, now I just... Wait, takes, push? That's interesting. A7 and bishop b7 there. Yeah, we can just take... Yeah, because if you go check, we can always come back here. This is interesting. He's trying to send it down the flank with a pawn, but we do, unfortunately, or rather very fortunately for me, end up defending that queening square. And we now have 3 connected passed pawns, which I imagine won't have too much trouble in being promoted. Opposite colour bishop endgames tend to be a draw, but this one maybe breaks the mold a little, as we can just push. Keeping the king on a light square is obviously very pleasant, and really start to encroach here, force the king back. Maybe even we can use our bishop. As long as the bishop stays on this diagonal, then we're fine. I don't know if he'll resign or play on until mate. It'll be interesting. Okay, do we give the check? I give the check, you go back. Yeah, we can give the check. Why the hell would I not give the check? Forces him back to the second rank. Now I guess I'll just push this. The pawns are coming. Bishop still holds a8. The only way this somehow goes wrong is if I, you know, play bishop a6 or bishop c8 erroneously, or give a check and then get carried away down here, allow promotion, and somehow there we go. Resignation, and a very finely fought game. I must give credit to my dad there. A roughly 500 elo difference on Lichess. That should have been much more of a mauling than it was. Never underestimate your opponent. Let's quickly analyze that game. Okay, so here we are in the analysis with a graph that tells the story of I played very well into the opening, garnered a pretty serious advantage, and then shouldn't have taken the pawn. Why did I take that pawn? It was, I believe, fairly uncharacteristic of me to try and cash in my initiative for a pawn on the flank. I don't know why I did that. I mean, let's begin going through the game. However, from that sort of drawish position, for a brief moment after a5, there was an advantage. I guess we'll investigate that. But never particularly in trouble. However, definitely imprecise to not have converted more from the opening advantage that I built. However, then playing the endgame fairly precisely, I'd imagine. Okay, so b3, e5. This is, by the way, I'm pretty sure all theory if we just scroll down here. So you can see the master's database above. Bishop b2, knight c6, e3, d5, bishop b5, bishop d6. And then, yeah, as I mentioned, f4, the top move in the master's database. And then there is an interesting line, queen h4, g3, and queen e7, as I mentioned. However, he goes for the slightly less popular but still very solid move, knight to f3. I play f6 here, a move played, and that has quite a good win percentage for masters. But then instead of c4 or d4, okay, this is where we deviate. With an interesting inaccuracy in knight h5. Now, if I'd played something stupid here, we could have seen takes, queen here, g6, here, and I lose a rook. However, of course, bishop here is what I went for. Then if the queen comes to h5, I can play bishop f7, and there's no knight g6 threat. So instead, we see the trade here. The pawn's pushed, and I push past. Yeah, this is the fundamental mistake that, really closes down the bishop. Allows my bishop to be nice and open. G4 actually one of the best moves there, which is awesome. Knight G6, not too bad. I should have castled, which I guess makes sense because if I castle here, I can take with the rook, and this is, very nice and aggressive. I wouldn't have imagined he'd have taken. I'd have imagined, yeah, like the queen comes in and maybe there's like G6 ideas, the rook gets here. Castling it was not my cup of tea. So instead I went for the open H file, takes with the queen, and I end up in this position that I'm very happy with. Now, why did I not play queen H4? Or why did I not get the king and get my rook over quick? Because I was talking about those ideas and then just abandoned them for a mere pawn. Now, this is a blunder, but it's far more of a missed win than a blunder. I still have some advantage, but I could have applied the pressure far, far better. And this extra pawn was hardly worth it. Now, instead of king d7, this was a mistake where I really gave away some advantage. I had queen here, potentially threatening to go in with check. I'm not entirely sure. Here, I should have played queen g2. Yeah, just definitely a pretty large misstep to take the pawn on h2. I'm not entirely sure what prompted me to do so. Like, we did have a lot of pressure. It's because I thought he was going to play knight f1 and then quite easily castle this way. But then again, like, why trade the rook on this open h file? I could have just... Okay, anyway, we take, and then, yeah, king d7, not my finest move. a5 here. Oh, no. Here, and then what? Don't tell me. d5. That's so nasty. My queen, my bishop... I play bishop e5, you can take here, I take, there's like queen c4 idea, oh my lord, okay, so completely missed that idea with knight takes d5. Obviously here I wouldn't have taken, or possibly I wouldn't have taken. Actually the best move is to take, then after d5, bishop e5 was the best move, and then I guess king c8, and instead of, you know, taking here and allowing some checks. It wouldn't have been awful, it would have been at least vaguely playable, but pretty lucky you didn't see that. A very natural a4 though, preventing my a4. Then bishop here, and okay, from this point onwards, I believe the game was then played perfectly. I don't know, there was it was an odd blip. Yeah, f3 I took, I then brought my rook over. This trade happened, and there's a weak pawn here. The queen trade, and then bringing the rook behind to force takes, then playing c6. And then, yeah, this is a mistake. Okay, so bishop here going after this pawn necessary. This is a very hard endgame to handle. Of course, black is the one pressing, but objectively it's going to be a draw, as most opposite color bishop endgames are. The idea to push past, I believe, was some kind of suppressive, I don't know. I think, honestly, the time trouble might have been to blame for that. But then I can bring the bishop here. And letting me do that, you just can't afford to give me that kind of power. Here, we give the check, and I then come back up to e3. If I have a little look, rook e3 was the best move. Awesome. Rook e3. The pawn's pushed, which actually was the best move. Nice. Okay, a little gambit there. And then instead of going for the appropriate rook to d4 to try and win this back, which I guess would have made sense, and if I go check here, the king can come out. I guess I'd have had rook here. Still, that would have been more resilient. He then prematurely pushes the pawn. Then I can go in here, rook here, and pretty perfectly calculated, I think, in terms of forcing the trade of the rooks, coming in here with the king. And if you do go for a move like bishop here, after king b7, bishop here, king a6, bishop takes here. Hold on, the engine's suggesting king e2. How does that make any sense? I just take the bishop. a6, bishop c8, a7. Oh, wow, hold on. If I take here, a6 wins, because if this, you push this, and my bishop can't stop both these pawns. That's insane. I mean, I'd imagine that after a move like king here, I could have played bishop c8, defended both of these, such that neither could be pushed. The bishop then, if one was pushed, then I could take it, would have time to come back and defend the promotion square of the other. Then I'd be threatening the bishop, then the bishop would move, then I'd win one of these pawns. However, instead he went for this e6 idea. I took, bishop takes, bring my king across, and now I'm just going to be winning these pawns. If you had brought the bishop to b6, then you wave goodbye to your right to move literally any of these pieces, and I left to dance with the king, trying desperately to stop past pawns that are on opposite sides of the board. So instead, I pick up this pawn, bring the bishop back, stop the promotion, and then, yeah, begin the process of pushing my pawns. This would have been fairly easy to convert, I'd imagine. As we control just all of these squares, we slowly just push, make progress, bring the king in, etc. It also helps that I have this other pawn over here, so if the bishop gets too distracted, you know, we can draw the pieces back over to the king side. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. My dad proves himself a very worthy opponent indeed. Not exactly my finest chess, and I can only apologize for playing rook takes h2, but we secure the exceedingly necessary win nevertheless. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to see a rematch, comment below. If you want to see me with the white pieces, and we'll maybe do a part 2. But thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.